The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are my own or those of my guests, and in no way represent the views of the company or companies that I or we work for. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they are told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. You're listening to Squawk Ident, an aviation podcast dedicated to the journey and the challenges surrounding the life and career of Aviator Tony and his guests. Together, we will explore the many pathways to an aviation profession, the realities of what a professional aviator can expect in today's marketplace, and we share many stories along the way. I'm your host, Aviator Tony, an airline pilot currently flying for a legacy airline with close to 20 years on the flight line. This is episode 24 of Squawk Ident, recorded on the 8th of February, 2020, from the Aviator Sound Studios somewhere in Southern California. On this episode of Squawk Ident, I'm joined by Kellie Miller. She is a doctor of pharmacology, a pilot, and a friend. Together, we will discuss the current risk factors to flight crews and passengers alike while flying within the U.S. as it pertains to the 2019 novel coronavirus and the best practices to prevention. We will also find out about the Miller Results Group. And, of course, we hear a little bit about the journey Miss Miller has navigated. All this and more on this episode of Squawk Ident. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, right after a brief word from our sponsors. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Well, I am very happy to be able to bring to you on Squawk Ident today a very special person, a very dear friend, and a former flight student. I am privileged in being joined by someone who has been a constant in my journey so far. Anytime I have a question about anything medical, I go directly to her for the answer. She is a graduate from Drake University with a bachelor's in pharmacy. She also graduated from University of Colorado, Denver with a PharmD degree. She's practiced in Iowa, Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, and is currently a co-owner and co-founder of Miller Results Group. Joining us from her chateau in Tampa Bay, Florida, please help us in welcoming to the show, Miss Kellie Miller. Kellie, how are you? It's so good to have you on the show.
I'm great. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, absolutely, isn't it? So, here on Squawk Ident, I am absolutely honored in the fact that you have been following the show and supporting me. You've been supporting me for years. We've known each other since somewhere around 2005, I believe. Yeah. So 15 years, and we've...
Not 15 years?
15 years.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we were very young when we first met. Kellie walked into the flight school one day in Chandler, Arizona, and said, "I want to get flying lessons." And I had the privilege of being the one selected to give her some flying lessons. And she is a GA pilot with 120 hours. And growing, I hope. Are you still building on time? Maybe in the future?
Maybe in the future. It's on hold for the moment.
Yeah. Well, you've been very, very busy. And, we kind of keep up here and there with conversations and emails and cards. And you and your husband Joe have just been a pleasure to have in our circle, and I'm very honored to call you guys dear friends. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank
The,
you.
the reason that I asked you onto the show was because in our last episode of Squawk Ident, Rob D and I had a conversation about all of this coronavirus media frenzy that's going on. And one of the events that happened to me was on my last trip, I got into the flight ops and I was looking on my phone and I'm watching video after video on different platforms via social media, YouTube, even, CNN.com or Fox.com, whatever news I was looking at. I was scrolled through quite a bit to try to get content, obviously, for the show. And, video after video of these government organizations or city organizations spraying people down, passengers down as they're exiting aircraft, with some kind of antiviral, whatever they're using to spray. And it freaked me out a little bit. And the captain next to me, she was getting ready to go to Auckland. And she's like, oh, yeah, they sprayed us here at Legacy Airlines as well. When we land, they spray us down,
With what?
She named the chemical that they use, the drug, whatever they're using, the chemical, some biological antiviral that they're spraying down. If I find the video, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I have no idea. It was, I believe it was Indonesian Air, something like that. Yeah. So
I saw a photo of somebody being sprayed in the face with no goggles or anything. And I just kind of stared at it. Yeah. I thought, what is that?
And these videos are not helping, us, at least here in the United States, or North America, I should say, in giving us really the facts. And they're really, it's fear mongering. It's, in my opinion, it's a very serious virus that is, spreading out. We hear the numbers every day. Every news cycle has it. How many people are dead? How many people are infected? And I got to admit, I got into the cockpit and right away I took those alcohol wipes that we have. We tear the packages open and, they're there for our safety to prevent, germs and common cold, flu, virus and stuff like that. We wipe down the controls of the aircraft in the cockpit. It is the shared space. I mean, that airplane might fly 10 times a day with 10 flight crews and, you don't know who was just in there if they were not feeling well or whatnot. So they're there for our protection. But I got to admit, I'm not very consistent with wiping everything down because part of that is complacency. And another part of it is, it's not in the public realm. It's pilots. And most of the pilots I know, if they're sick, any excuse to stay home, they're going to call in sick and stay home. It's a paid sick. So, why would you go to work if you're not feeling up to it? Yeah. And I want to kind of set the record straight. So that's why I've asked you to come onto the show, and you've been very gracious to accept my invitation, and I thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah.
So here, the CDC, the latest that I came across was an article that was published yesterday, and they talked about how this coronavirus safety measures at these major international airports are being ramped up rapidly. And in an article that I'll reference in the show notes, but in an article by one of the websites I follow called airporttechnology.com, an article by Previn Duddu, D-U-D-D-U, he wrote in an article published yesterday that some of the major and busiest international airports in the world started announcing preventative safety measures against the spread of coronavirus after its outbreak in China and the quick spread to 25 more countries. The virus was first found, as we all know, in Wuhan, a place I had never heard of before this story broke out about a week and a half ago, and the capital. It's the most populated city in the Hubei province in central China and has been spreading at a rapid pace despite various preventative measures being taken by the Chinese authorities. The deaths caused by the 2019 novel coronavirus, or known as the 2019 NCOV, have been increasing at a rapid pace from the mere 2 reported initially to 170 in less than a month. The reported deaths due to this infection more than doubled in 4 days to 362 by the 2nd of February. And they reached 493 as of the 5th of February. International passengers traveling from China are naturally the biggest risk to the countries they arrive to. The U.S. Department of State has issued a level 4 travel advisory to China, meaning that the public is not advised to travel to China. Earlier, the CDC issued a level 3 recommendation to avoid travel unless essential to Wuhan, and a level 2 warning to the rest of China. But given the fast pace, the CDC revised the travel warning to a level 3. So here in the US, we're watching these, news articles, we're seeing all this stuff on social media, these videos. And, I'm not a medical professional. Would never claim to be even knowledgeable. I'm constantly, if I have a question, I do my best to do my due diligence, look things up on the internet. WebMD. Of course, if you go to WebMD, every symptom you have means you're dying. So I come to you for the truth. Whenever I have a question, I can't find the answer. I know you're a text message away. You've always been so kind and so good to get back to me. So really, what I wanted to talk to you about is, what can we be doing, or what should we be doing here in the U.S., in your opinion, to help prevent this spread? Should we be wearing masks? Should we be isolating ourselves and not traveling, or what's going on?
I think the first thing is, do not panic. The risk to most U.S. citizens is very, very low. So if existent at all. So I think that's number one. Number two, it is a virus. So it is related to SARS. It's related to MERS, which is the Middle Eastern version of SARS that came out a few years ago. It's also related to the common cold. With this particular virus, it can develop into a pneumonia, which is basically fluid in your lungs, and can progress further than that. As far as what you can do to prevent it, I would say the biggest thing is wash your hands. So wash your hands with soap and water as much as you can, 20 seconds each time. So that's essentially happy birthday twice. So happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. Sing that twice and then dry off, and be careful what you touch, like the bathroom door, that kind of thing. If you can walk out with your paper towel and you can open the door with your paper towel and throw it away in the bin on your way out, good. If you can't be somewhere where you can actually wash your hands with soap and water, then an alcohol-based sanitizer is best. It has to be at least 60% alcohol to kill cold viruses. They don't know a whole lot about this coronavirus yet, but they are extrapolating from SARS cold viruses, other things that we do know about and how they behave, because they are similar. So not to make assumptions, but those would be the things that I would do preventatively, because we don't know anymore.
Yeah.
They don't know so far how long it can remain viable on surfaces. So wiping down the cockpit, like you said, I would totally be doing that. 60% or more alcohol. So your isopropyl alcohol ranges between 70% and 91%. Any of those will work. Wipe down everything. I would be more diligent, but not so much because I think you're going to, contract coronavirus, but influenza, or a common cold, or anything else. Unfortunately, if you go to Japan, you see the planes there are just immaculate. They clean between flights and all of this stuff. Here, they don't. So the tray tables and everything are just grungy. You don't know who was sitting there. You don't know who sneezed on your tray table. Most people don't wipe those down. And keep in mind that nobody else is wiping them down either. So, just take those types of precautions. So I would be wiping things down with alcohol.
Yes.
Other than that, if you feel under the weather, wearing a mask is probably a good idea. In fact, I think that is recommended. And that can be, your basic mask off of Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
If you are trying to prevent someone from giving you coronavirus, an N95 mask is really the only thing that's going to filter out particles that are that small. So the masks that you can buy off of Amazon that do not have an N95 rating are probably doing very little for you as far as protecting you from someone else, but they will protect other people from you sneezing, you coughing, you distributing large particles around to other people.
Yeah. So if you're under the weather and you're traveling,
Yeah.
and
And
that's a
you
good
have
idea.
to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't have to travel, don't be there.
Right.
But if you do have to travel and you're under the weather, yeah, by all means wear a mask.
Yeah.
It's
But it's not
definitely
gonna.
courteous.
It's not gonna. You got to go to CVS and buy an over-the-counter mask that's not an N95, not
Correct.
fitting you. Professionally looked at and to make sure it's fitting you correctly, and then handled correctly. Because now, if you're touching that mask to take it up to go drink a glass of water and then you put it back down, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not really a sterile environment. And
Right.
all you're doing, you lift up the mask. And the minute you lift up the mask, you kind of defeat the purpose if you're in that high risk environment.
Exactly.
So no, it's good to hear.
Yeah. If you were going into, so in a hospital, we're all fitted with an N95 mask. And basically there are 3, I think, sizes. There's a small, there's a regular, and then there's a large. So depending on the size of your face and whether your face is more round or more, lengthened, you fit it around your nose and mouth like this. And then you try to make a seal so that if you breathe in, it actually, you feel the suction.
Mm.
Then what I have experienced as far as being fitted, they put a hood over your head, so a big, hood like this,
Mm-hmm.
and then they will aerosolize saccharin into that bigger hood. If you can taste the saccharin, you don't have a good seal, so your mask isn't fitting correctly. If you can't taste the saccharin, and they give it 90 seconds or so, then so if you don't taste that sweetness, then you're good to go. Another thing that happens in the hospital is that if someone has aerosolized precautions, they're going to be in a room that has negative pressure. So the air conditioner system will be pulling air into the room from the hallway rather than pushing it out, and that vents directly to the outside. So if you go in that room and you are a healthcare professional and you're caring for that patient, you're not going to take that mask off the entire time you're in that room.
Right.
Because you've just exposed yourself. But those are the precautions that they would actually take in the hospital to prevent anything that is 0.3 microns or larger from being inhaled by someone who's caring for someone else.
Yeah.
So a mask that you can see through, from CVS, you're not getting that 0.3 micron filtering at all.
Yeah.
So,
really the point of me really trying to get the word out is because I've heard so many people reach out, either through the Squawk Ident social media with comments. I put up a question up there it was a photo, the myths versus the facts of the coronavirus. And, it had its flaws. I didn't create it. I borrowed it from the internet and put it out there to start a conversation. And a lot of the responses I had were, it's kind of, they were saying, like, don't be racist against Asian people because, not all Asians are going to have, not all people from China are going to have this, obviously. And not all people that have traveled in from China are going to have this. So don't immediately, because we start to see this already. And a lot of the news outlets love to report on this. It's like, oh yeah, these people are being discriminated against. And of course that strikes a chord immediately, regardless of what we're trying to talk about here. It's like, oh, it's all BS. And, it's all just the media trying to go and sensationalize a story so that people will go out and spend money on stuff like masks and go around. But at the same time, it's a real thing. It's a very serious virus. And it's important that we're aware of what's going on. But the numbers that are coming out of China and Taiwan, I mean, we've heard these stories that they've been altered, they've been faked, they've been changed, and numbers usually don't change after the fact. They're usually progressive numbers, right? So, oh, now we have 5, now we have 10, we have 20. And these numbers are like really high numbers. Like, how many people are dead now? At 265 was the last thing I saw yesterday, I think. I don't know what today's numbers are, but or is it in the
saw
thousands?
722
So
from China.
722 from China.
But I think we don't know because they don't necessarily, we don't know if they're reporting, accurately or not.
Right. And we were talking a little bit earlier about, here in the US, we have antivirals, we have, some of the best medical facilities, in the world. And what kind of facilities are they dealing with? I was reading earlier that they were making makeshift hospitals, like, out of buildings and stuff because so many people are infected and they're trying to isolate them. What kind of medications could they possibly have? Do they have the modern medicine that we have? Do they have antivirals? Or are these people dying because they're simply treating them like they have a fever and, get your rest and eat your chicken soup? I mean, what's going on?
Well, unfortunately, though, for coronavirus, antivirals don't consistently work. So the CDC doesn't have any recommendation for medication treatment. It's literally just supportive care. So it would be keeping someone hydrated, making sure their kidneys don't shut down. It would be making sure that you protect their airway. So, if they need to go on a respirator or if they need oxygen, they're having trouble breathing, doing whatever you can to make sure that they continue breathing. And then if they have fluid in their lungs and it's progressing, make sure that if they contract a bacteria while they're in the hospital, you get them on antibiotics for that. But as far as the virus itself, it basically has to run its course.
Yeah. So really, is this really the seriousness of the coronavirus? Is it because we don't have any medication at this point in time to fight it directly?
Part of it, yeah.
Yeah. And so here as an aviator, I'm always concerned about what's my risk factor, what's the risk factor of my crew, the people that I might be jointly responsible for a period of time that I'm out. And, even the other day, Julie was like, when you come home, I think you should leave your bags in the garage and maybe you should start. I'm like, oh, come on. I'm not going to China. I don't have any contact with anyone. I don't even really have contact in the terminal. I walk from one door to another and I get in the airplane. I'm in the cockpit. But I understand where that's coming from. And I absolutely, can feel not the panic, but the worry, the concern. And as aviators, should we be at all concerned? I mean, unless you're physically going to China on a 777 international for whatever airline you work for, I can understand you're going into an area very close to where this epidemic is, coming out from. But if you're not, really, what do you see as any risk factors? Is it something I should be worried about other than like what you mentioned, wiping stuff down for the common flu, common cold? Should I be worried?
I would say, according to what the CDC is reporting, no, you have little to no exposure risk. I would definitely keep checking back with the CDC and also with the World Health Organization. Those are going to be your two best information sites. The other media, they may get things right, they may get things wrong. They do like to sensationalize because that makes a great story. That's not to say they're doing it maliciously, but if you want the solid facts and what we actually know, cdc.gov and WHO are the two places that I would go to look. As of right now, the CDC is saying that if you are in the US, even as a pilot, and you are flying within the continental US, you have essentially no risk. If you are flying back and forth to China and you have little to no contact with anyone in China, you go to your hotel, you stay in your hotel room, you don't have any contact with anyone who appears to be ill, you're still at low risk and you are essentially self-monitoring. So you're watching for any signs of fever, any signs of cough or runny nose, any signs of shortness of breath or other difficulties with your respiratory system. And if you do develop something like that, then by all means report it. But if you go to the CDC, they're basically saying your risk is very low.
Okay. So, and if, let's say I'm on a trip and I start to get the sniffles and I'm now running a fever of 101 and, you know, and I happen to have walked through one of the major U.S. cities that are currently screening, like JFK or Los Angeles, San Francisco, who've all started screening passengers coming in from China with the thermometers. And let's just say because it takes 12, 14 days for incubation on this particular virus. So
they're estimating 14 days.
Yeah. So if I'm in contact with someone during that 14-day period, is it like the movies where they touch my arm and boom, I'm automatically infected? Or how does this work? I mean, if I was in contact with someone who was in the incubation period, who had the virus, and I stopped and had a conversation with them, what's the likelihood of me really catching it?
Again, probably very low. That's where the hand washing comes in. Also, some people just habitually, like they pull at their lip or they wipe their nose or they, scratch their eye, something like that. Those types of things are probably the way that it's being transmitted. And then also possibly surfaces, although they don't know that. It's airborne. So your 2-foot radius. If somebody is actively ill and, coughing on you, sneezing on you, that kind of thing, that would worry me, especially if they later turn up positive and then you fall ill. But if they aren't showing any signs and you are doing your hygienic hand washing, et cetera, again, I think your risk is very low. If you're just walking by someone in the airport, that's not enough contact to be an issue.
Yeah, so definitely there has to be like a sneeze, a cough, some kind of micro particle of moisture, saliva, has to be droplet of saliva. So not necessarily touch because, unless they're can it be transferred with like a handshake? If their hands are clean and my hands are clean?
Potentially, yes, but we don't know that. I mean, that is unknown at this point. But with other viruses, like a cold virus, yes. So that is a potential transmission.
So coughing in your sleeve, or I see a lot of people, they pick up their t-shirt and they cough down their t-shirt and stuff like that. Best practice, not coughing in your hand, obviously.
Right.
I'm
and
old
then
school.
Shaking someone else's. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's another show completely, which I'm sure would turn not just your stomach, but my listeners' stomachs too. And I've kind of mentioned it before, and I'd like to give it a little bit more detail in a future episode maybe. But, I'm in airports all the time, and I can't tell you, I go to the men's room, and the guy next to me, he just walks right out. No hand washing whatsoever. My favorite, they come out of a stall, and they come right out of the stall, and no hand washing whatsoever. And they walk right onto the airport in a public place. And who knows, that maybe they're the guy that walks right up to the next guy and says, "Hey, how you doing? Let me shake your hand."
Yeah.
Yeah. Fist bump.
Go ahead.
Fist bump. No handshaking.
Yeah, fist bump, elbow bump, or simply say, I'm not shaking hands right now. I'm trying to make sure that I don't, transmit anything. A lot of physicians do not shake hands. You go into a room, you're not shaking hands with anybody in there because that's potentially transmitting whatever that patient has, bacteria or otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's actually a better practice to, just nicely say, I prefer not to shake hands. I'll, elbow bump you if you want me to,
Right. And that's a big deal because, with each flight, we usually have a new crew. So the first
Yeah.
thing you want to do is introduce yourself. I do my best.
Yeah.
Now the captain's responsible for doing a pre-flight briefing. So usually the captain will get his or her tablet together with the flight plan and the weather. Before boarding, they'll step into the galley in first class, have all the other flight attendants come up, and they'll introduce each other. And he'll say, okay, here's the flight, here's the routing, here's the estimated time and route, and the weather. It might be bumpy here, might be bumpy there. And, if you have any questions, they go over kind of some security protocols. And then, usually shake each other's hand, have a good day. If you need anything, give me a call. And so then, of course, he or she gets in the cockpit. And so lately, I've noticed a decrease in people offering up their hand.
Yeah.
And, even I was on this last trip where I saw all these videos and I'm like, oh, is this really happening here? I was like, I'll give you a fist bump, 'cause
Yeah.
I hate to kind of be rude, but you have a very good point. And I've been told that too. I'm not shaking hands right now if you want to, give you an elbow or something.
Yeah.
But that's great. And unfortunately, that's the society we live in right now.
Okay.
So I wanted to actually spend a little time on your latest adventure with Joe, Miller Results Group. And it was very exciting to me to hear that here you are in the medical profession, and you guys together decided to co-found this company that kind of integrates software and personnel. And I want to give you the opportunity to tell my listeners and actually tell me a little bit more about it. What can you tell me about the Miller Results Group?
Well, Miller Results Group is essentially my husband Joe's dream, I guess. So he has worked in IT for many, many years. He's also worked in HR and has a couple of certifications in both. Actually, 5 certifications in IT and I think 2 in HR.
Oh.
And we try to marry the 3 components that we see as the backbone of a company working efficiently and effectively. So one of those pieces is software, choosing the correct software and optimizing that software. So software that a company is already paying for, but potentially is only using 10 to 20% of what it actually can do, or buying duplicate types of software that do the same things. And if you can save costs by, grabbing the functions of one set of software and getting rid of the other ones, that kind of thing. A lot of companies don't realize that there's so much duplication. So the software is one component of that. Another component is processes. So start to finish, what do you do to complete the tasks that you need to complete in your company? Third would be the personnel. Are they comfortable using the software, or are they bypassing the software that you have to use Excel spreadsheets? Are they comfortable navigating it? Are they potentially adult learners who are like, I just don't get this, or I don't trust it, or, where's my stuff going, or, that kind of thing. So we just combine all 3 of those. Yeah.
You combine which 3?
So software, people, and processes.
Okay. So it sounds like really the company is someone who specializes in streamlining those 3 things. Streamlining efficiency with the software that you have, with your personnel to make sure that they're actually using the software accordingly so that productivity remains in the area you want it. And again, the processes of doing all those things and integrating that. So you're streamlining the efficiencies of the languages of a company being personnel and IT.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So very well said.
Thank you. I learned from the best.
Yeah. So currently we have a financial services company that we're working with. We also have a municipality that we're working with.
Oh, wow.
And we have a small to mid-size, about 300 employees, actually IT company that we're working with.
Oh,
And
cool.
then our favorite is our nonprofit that we're working with.
Oh, great.
So, yeah, so we've got our hands in a few different buckets. I will say the nonprofit is the most rewarding, in the sense that, I don't know, I like seeing the benefit go out, to people who really need it. So,
Yeah, that's good karma too, when you know you're
yeah,
helping an
exactly.
organization that's doing good.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I guarantee that in the near future, I will be in a restroom at an airport near you singing happy birthday 2 times while I'm washing my hands between every flight.
Yep.
And it's
With
going to
soap.
be, well, my friend Kelly said, I got to sing happy birthday twice. And, seeing a grown man do that, I think, is a special treat for all those involved.
You can sing it in your head.
But yeah, I could, but I'm not really good at that. I probably happy birthday, and people will like, oh, he's mumbling, and he's my pilot. Oh my god, is it
Yeah,
safe?
there you go. You hearing voices?
Oh
Yeah.
man,
I will say that I still turn off everything in my car before I cut the engine because of you. Like
yes,
I shut down,
yes,
yeah.
yeah. Get everything off. The air
uh,
conditioner turns off. Everything turns. Radio turns off. Then you shut down your car.
Yeah.
And why is that, Kelly?
So you don't overcharge anything when you turn it back on? Or
Yeah,
so it what?
yeah, yeah. That was from our airplane days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those were good.
Yeah.
Those were good times. I
Yeah.
have very, very fond memories. A couple embarrassing memories that I must admit I was guilty of being younger and, a flight instructor young and said and did some embarrassing things that now I look back and I go, yeah, did I actually say that? Or did I actually do that?
I did more. So,
Yeah. Well, that's part of the joy of the journey. And your
yeah.
journey has been, quite exciting as well, as part of the show. What we really are focusing on in this aviation podcast is the journey. So Squawk Ident, as you know, is a podcast that highlights the journey of aviators out there and how they got started, how they ended up where they are. I've always been curious about, how did you make that work? And we kind of focus on that, but I don't want to limit this discussion of the journey just to aviators. And since I have you, you do have quite a bit of hours in the general aviation field, and you're uh, an absolute professional in what you do. And your journey is very interesting to me. And I know we don't have time to kind of like dive into all the intricate details of how you became a PharmD and how you ended up working at this hospital and that hospital. I have had the privilege of hearing the stories over the years, and I've even had you tell me, I must admit, yeah, don't go to this particular hospital in case anything happens because, yeah, not good. And I've always appreciated that. Wherever I lived, if you were working in a hospital here or there, I've always been very appreciative. Going, don't come here. Have them take you over there. Don't come here, or don't go there. Have them take you over here. And so
Yeah.
how did you get to be where you are? Your pathway. Give me like one thing that really kind of shaped your journey.
I like science.
Yeah.
So I originally was a pre-vet major. And then as soon as I figured out that I would have to work with large animals, namely sticking my arm up to my shoulder in a cow to, help birth a calf or something like that,
Mhm.
I figured that probably wasn't for me, mainly because I'm not big enough to handle a cow or a gelding or, any large animal that's kind of misbehaving or otherwise, freaking out for some reason.
Right.
But you have to do that to get to the small animals. So my next option that I can't say I thought a whole lot about it. My mom is a pharmacist, so that was kind of the natural progression. So I transferred from what was at the time Iowa State, went to Drake, got a bachelor's in pharmacy, which was the starting degree at the time. Now they only offer the PharmD. Then Joe and I got engaged. We moved to Phoenix, which is where he went to school. And then I got a job in hospital pharmacy down in Phoenix. Always preferred that to any other aspect of pharmacy, just because you learn more, you use more of your degree. It's just more interesting in my perspective.
Sure.
So then it was just, okay, I've mastered this part. Let's move on to this part. Okay, I've mastered that too. Now let's move on to this part. And there were just different areas that I wanted to kind of taste test. Once we used to have two big golden retrievers, and once they died off of natural causes, then we decided that we wanted to leave the desert, go to the ocean, and and just kind of hang out there for a while. So that's how we ended up in Florida. Then I was offered a position with a prestigious university teaching hospital up in North Carolina. So we moved up there, spent about 5 years there, and it was a great experience, excellent experience. It was also extremely stressful. You get the sickest of the sick. You get, it's almost, I worked in the OR most of the time. So it was very fast paced, questions coming at you from all different directions. They could be about literally anything, and they needed the answers essentially right now. So after about 5 years of that, it kind of takes its toll. And I thought, no, Joe wants to start this company. We want to make a lifestyle change, and we want to be able to work from anywhere. So that's where the IT comes in, because you can literally dial in and you can work from anywhere. You can Skype, you can Zoom, you can remote into somebody's system and fix whatever problem they're having, or build out, whatever solution they need. And so that's how that got started. And we came back down here because we wanted to live by the ocean. And so we're building this company now.
Excellent. And, I wish you and Joe absolutely the very best in your success with your company. If there's anything I could ever do to help you guys out, I'm a phone call away. And it sounds like the interesting part of your journey is not unlike what an aviator goes through when they're trying to constantly be looking for what's next. You start out, you decide to go after this career. You start out you go to flight school and, flight instruct, and whatever path you take, whether that's military, and then you progress over to general aviation, or you start in general aviation and you progress over to airlines. You're constantly looking forward. You're constantly looking what's next. And that really, from what I'm learning, by producing this podcast and getting to talk to all these amazing people, is there's a common thread, and it's always looking forward, not settling into your comfortable position, because you get to know it, you get to do it well, and you get comfortable. And that degree of comfort has always made me personally nervous, because I think, because I'm always working, as you know me, I mean, I'm always doing something, and here I am now, doing a podcast. So, always moving forward. And I applaud you for your journey. It sounds like it's been very successful. You've had a very good journey so far. And I'm very curious to see how it all turns out here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to get your take and your expertise on what's really going on with this virus, and how scared and how much panic should we have, which it sounds to me, and I think you'd agree, it's that everything's going to be okay. We just have to practice good hygiene, not overreact. If you are in contact, or if you do find yourself with symptoms that possibly could be a little bit more than a flu or a cold, then
Yep.
go get
Seek
checked out.
medical attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to urgent care, go to your doctor, go do something.
Yeah.
And it's great. So again, Kellie, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you to Kellie Miller for spending the time to explain the facts about the 2019 NCOV, or the novel coronavirus, and the best practices we all can use to stay healthy. I would also encourage you to check out the Miller Results Group website at millerresults.com. I will place a link in the show notes so you can click right there. You can also find them on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Just search for Miller Results. If you would like to learn more about what the Miller Results Group can do for your business, you can email them at info@millerresults.com. Make sure you tell them that you heard about them from Aviator Tony and the Squawk Ident podcast. Again, a big thank you to Kellie and Joe for their support of Squawk Ident. Are you enjoying Squawk Ident? Please visit our website at www.aviatortony.com. That's Alpha Victor, the number 8, Romeo Tango Oscar November Yankee.com. There you can check out episode cover art, episode archives, the pilot shop, and you can leave listener feedback. You can contribute to the show and help with equipment, software, marketing expenses by becoming a producer of Squawk Ident, either with a one-time or a monthly contribution. Now, you can leave us up to 90 seconds of audio feedback under the Contact Us tab from the website as well. If you have more to say, just record anything you want on your phone or recording device and email it to me as an MP3, and I'll be sure to give it a listen and put it on the show. Are you listening on Apple Podcasts to the Squawk Ident show? Well, if you like what you hear, it would be really great if you could leave us a like, leave us a good review, and even share the show with someone you might think might enjoy Squawk Ident. In closing, I'd like to just say thank you for taking the time to listen to this grateful aviator. Keep the dirty side down, be safe, and take care of each other.